Hello everyone, I am Frans, and in this tutorial we're gonna convert our basic game towards a state-based game. Now, what I got here is our basic game, and you can see it runs, it says this is our basic game, and um, we want to have a little game here with a game over screen. Now, we could have something like a big if statement, like when a game over, it's gonna draw a game over, or else it's gonna draw a game. But Slick has something built into it that's called a state-based game. So let's just start out by converting this. So a state-based game is basically a game that exists out of multiple basic games. So when I say this, I have to import it. And as you can see, it's going to give an error. This is because we don't use these methods anymore. They're not situated in the state-based game, but they are going to be in the different states. So let's just remove this, and it's also going to tell us that we have a different method here, and it's called the init states list. And what this basically means is when we create our state-based game here, it's going to call this method, and let's change this container. And what we want to do here is we want to add our states when we begin. So what we're going to do is let's just make another class, and we're going to use a state-based game here. So let's call this game state. There we go. Now we're going to extend this from basic game state. Now it's going to tell us it doesn't know it yet. Import it, and you can see here when I add the methods, you can see our render, init, and update methods again. Now let's just clean this up a little bit and move this one below, because I like it in the way of the init first, and because it's the way as well, update and then render. And you can see here there's another method here, it's called getID. Now, because our game can have multiple states, we have to know how to switch between those states. And you can do that by using the ID. But let's just first make something here. Let's say graphics drawString state 1. Let's draw it at 50-50. Now, when we run our game, it's not going to do anything because, well, we don't have the state added to our state-based game yet. And we can do that by using the method called addState. And it's going to use a game state. So we have to use new game state. And you can see it's going to try to create this this class here, or create an object of it. And you can see now it's going to run our game state here. Now if we want to add another state here, and we're going to do that, let's call this game over state. Again, use the extends, so we're just going to do this. There we go. And we're going to call this state 2. Now, we want to add the state as well. Game over state. Let's run this again. Well, you can see that it picks the first one as the default. And what if we want to show our state 2 on the screen here, our game over state? What we can do is, whenever we're pressing a button, for example, let's say if container get input is key pressed, and let's say input dot let's say key 1. Whenever we press key 1, this if is gonna fire. So what we can do here is we can ask the StateBasedGame to switch, and you can see that the init, update, and random methods also have this argument here called the StateBasedGame. So we can ask the StateBasedGame to enter state, and you can see two methods here. I'm gonna go over this a little later in the video. We're just gonna use this, and you can see that there's an ID here, and we've not given the game over state a different ID yet. So let's gonna give this ID 1, and we're gonna say switch to state 2 or state 1 in this case. So close our program, and when we start a game now, whenever I'm gonna press 1, which I'm gonna do right now, you can see it's gonna load up state 2. And the amazing thing of these states is that when it switches, only these methods are called, the update and render basically. And what that means is that, for example, if you want to have a state that has your menu, you could say whenever someone presses escape, enter the menu state. And whatever your game was doing will basically pause, because this is not gonna get called, so your game is not running while someone's in the menu. And that means is that you can simply switch a state to a menu, and if someone wants to return, have a button that returns it back to the game state, and it will be exactly where they left off. So very useful thing. And what we're going to do now is we're going to use these states to show our game over screen. So we're not going to draw state 2. We're actually going to say game over, and let's center it somewhere on the screen. Doesn't matter too much anyway. Let's close it down for now. And what we can do now is we don't want to simply switch over to our game over state instantly, and that's what the other method is for. So as we seen, we also have a different enter state, and it has a leave and enter transition. So what that basically means is that instead of simply switching over, it's going to use a transition effect. And to find which effects are available, you can find it over here, the reference libraries. Go to the Slick and state.transition. So there's a few transitions already available. If you want, you can override this class, extend it basically, and you can fill in the transition yourself to create your own transition. But we're just gonna use a fade out and a fade in. So whenever we're gonna leave, let's say new fade out transition, and whenever we're gonna fade into the game over screen, fade in transition. Now we're gonna have to import those. So whenever we press our key 1 now, we should see a fade out and a fade in. As you can see, nice fade out and a nice fade in over here. So our game over. So let's build the little game here. So we're going to use the different things that we learned in the previous tutorials to create a few circles or balls dropping from on top of the screen. So somewhere from here to here, and they're going to drop down, and once they reach the bottom side, you lose a life. Now you can catch these balls by using your mouse, and we're gonna use a little ball for that as well. And whenever you touch them with your ball, you're gonna get a point. So it shouldn't be too hard. So let's get started here. The first thing we're gonna need is a list of the balls that they're gonna drop. So let's get that first. Let's say private array list, and we're gonna use shapes for this. So what we could do is make a class that's called ball, but there's no real point for that, as the shape circle will fill our needs over here. So let's see how it's exactly called. There's a shape here, circle. So we're gonna say circle, and we'll probably have to import them as well. And let's call this balls. So on our init, we're gonna say balls is new array list circle. Let's import this, and let's import this as well. Now this is what we're going to need to store them. Now the first thing we're going to do now is let's get our ball on the mouse drawn. So let's create another one, and we're going to call it mouse ball. And when we're in it, we're going to say mouse ball is new circle, and let's create it at 0, 0. And it needs a radius as well. So let's say 20. Oh, there we go. And we're going to say render dot fill shape mouse ball, and let's give it a different color here. So let's say set color dot let's pick yellow. Now whenever we start a game now, you can see a ball here. So let's make it follow the mouse. So mouse ball dot set x, and we want to center it. So let's say set center x. So container dot get input dot get mouse, and the same thing for the y. Oh, there we go. So it should follow our mouse now. There we go. And maybe it's a bit big, so let's just make it a lot smaller here. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to spawn in some balls here. So on the update, we're gonna have a timer here, and we're gonna use the delta for this. Now the delta is also in the basic game, and it's basically the amount of milliseconds passed since the previous update. So for example, if you have 2 frames per second, you're gonna have 2 updates per second, and this delta is gonna be 500. So every 500 milliseconds an update is gonna get called. But since we're using about 60 FPS, this delta is gonna be somewhere around 16 or 17. But we're actually gonna use that, and we're gonna create a little something for that. And let's say time passed. Now time passed is going to be 0 at the start, and every update time passed is going to increase by the delta. And if the time passed is bigger than 500, So 2 balls per second here. We're going to say time passed is going to be 0. And we're going to create a new circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new circle to the list. And let's just spawn it at 300, 0 for now. So that's 300 for the X and 0 for the Y. And let's make them not too big as well. Now we have to render these balls as well. So we're gonna go to the render, and for every circle, and let's call them C, in the list of balls, we're gonna draw this one. So let's say fill a shape C, and let's give them a different color. Color.red. There we go. So if everything went right, we should see a ball here. Yes, we see that indeed. Now the next thing we want to do is let them actually drop. And to do that, we're gonna say for every circle in a balls list, we're gonna say c dot set center x, c dot get center x, and this has to be y, of course. Whoops. And we're gonna increase the y here, and let's just increase it by let's say delta divided by 10, because 17 pixels every time would be too much. So let's say this should be like 1.7 or something if we have 60 frames per second. So let's see, and there we go, dropping about every half a second, but they're moving a bit slow, I think. So let's increase it a little bit, divided by 5, and we also want to randomize the position that they're gonna spawn. So we're gonna add a random here. Let's call it random. We have to import this, and this is something that's supplied by Java. And on the init, random is new random. Now what we can say here is at 200, I think, should be fine. We want them a bit more over here, and we're gonna say at 200 plus random, or random, get our next integer. And what we can do here is we're going to say it returns a random or pseudo-random number between 0 and the specified value. So we're going to say 400. So this is going to give us a number between 0 and 400. So a circle will be spawned somewhere between 200 and 600. And you can see they're spawning all over the place now. The next thing we want to do is we want to remove them from the list if they get too far. And because our screen is 600 high, we're going to say that if our ball is higher than, let's say, 610, because we're going to use the center of them, we want to remove them. Now, if you're using this for loop method, you can't just remove the balls from the list, because it will just interrupt the for loop. What we can do is use a different type of for loop, and we're just gonna walk through the list from the back of the list towards the front. And we're gonna do that. Let's say integer I, and integer is not gonna be 0. It's gonna be size minus 1, because everything starts from 0, I mean. So if there's 5 balls in here, the last ball is going to be at index 4. So the I here is the size. It has to be above or equal towards 0, and we're going to lower I every time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say circle C is pulse dot get y I mean. So if C dot get center y is greater than 610, pulse dot remove I. Now what this does is it's going to loop through the list from the back to the front, and the reason for that is because if we remove something from the list is going to update, and if we update from the back to the front, only the ones in the back are being affected, and because we're moving from the back to the front, we don't have any problems with that. But if we would remove one from the list and everything would get placed one index to the front, we would get a problem, and we don't want that. So we should be able to remove our balls safely here, and we're also gonna draw a little something here. Draw string current balls and balls.size. Let's create that at 2050. So as we can see, the amount of balls is increasing, but as they reach the bottom, this should get removed. And as you can see here, they're getting removed. It's gonna stay at around 14 here. So the next thing we want to do is we also want to remove them if we collide with them. So let's get that as well. So we're gonna create an else if c dot intersects with our mouse ball, balls dot remove I. So run our game here, and as you can see, whenever I touch them now, they're gonna get removed. So the only thing left now is an amount of lives and an amount of points we acquired. Now because we want to show the amount of points in our game over state, we're gonna make them static over here. Now this is something that you probably don't want to do for a lot of things, but simple things like a global game score, you want to have global. So let's create public static integer game score. It's going to be at 0 and lives, and we're going to set that at 3. So what we want to do now is that whenever we remove a ball, when we intersect it with this, we're going to say setup class, and we can access our game score and lives here, and we're going to up the game score. And whenever we let one drop below, we're going to remove one from the lives. Now what we're also going to do is if setup class dot lives is 0, but what can happen is that if we lose too many at the same frame, we also want to have it even if it's lower than 0. And whenever it's lower than 0, we're going to use this one over here, and we can actually remove this. We're going to move it to the game over state. So let's do that. And let's also draw the amount of lives that we have. So use this one. There we go. Lives and points, and setup class dot game score, and setup class dot lives. And let's move this down a little bit. Say 35 and this at 50. No, the wrong one. The Y, to move it a little bit lower. And this should be points. Now what we're going to see here is that we're going to add the score. But when we're going to let them drop below 0 lines, going to lose them and game over. Now we did say that we wanted to show the game score on the end, and I also think that the balls are moving a bit shockingly. So what we're going to do first is we're going to limit the frame rate. So we're going to say set target frame rate to 60 FPS instead of the 3000 I have right now. And we're also going to draw our game score here. And let's say points earned. And this goes exactly the same as before. Dot game score. And let's draw that directly underneath the game over. And let's say 315. And let's also set the color. Color dot white. And we probably want to do the same thing with the text on the other screen. So let's close our game, run it again. And as you can see, the text is white and the balls are moving a bit less shockingly. And I already lost, and I only earned 0 points because I didn't touch any of the balls. So that's what you can do with the game states. I hope you learned something from this. You can try out and create your own little game like this, and it's basically a really good starting point to try out a few things here. And I hope you liked the video, and next time we're gonna cover animations. So I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.